All right, so we're gonna go ahead and finish the lesson that we couldn't finish on Monday or Friday. We kind of talked about the reciprocals of sine, cosine, and tangent. So we know that the reciprocal of sine is going to be cosecant. The reciprocal of cosine is going to be secant, and the reciprocal of tangent is going to be cotangent. And again, reciprocal just means flipping it over or putting it over one. So a little bit about the shortcut on how to remember the unit circle. As long as you know quadrant 1, you're going to know the rest of the circle. So that's kind of what I want you to practice on today. And remember, imagine that is your hand. Right, so we're just going to say that that's your thumb, and then obviously those fingers right there. All right, so the main ones that you kind of need to remember, obviously the 0 and the pi over 2, those are going to be given. You should know that that one is going to be 1 comma 0, and that's going to be 0 comma 1. So the ones that you really need to remember are going to be the first 3 fingers in the middle. In terms of the radians, you're just going to have to remember that the first one, the first finger from the bottom to top is going to be pi over 6, pi over 3. I mean, not pi over 3, pi over 4, and then pi over 3. Those radians you just got to remember. Now, when it comes to the shortcut, this is how it goes, and this is how I remember them. It goes 1, 2, 3, everything over 1. Sorry. Everything over 2, and then you take the square root of everything. Obviously, if you take the square root of 1, it's just 1, the square root of 2, and the square root of 3. How do we get the other values? Remember, those are gonna be the sine values. This is equivalent to sine, or in other words, it's your y value. How do we remember the other ones? Well, the other ones are gonna be pretty much the exact same thing, but backwards. So you start from the top all the way to the bottom. So 1, 2, 3. They're all going to be over 2. And you take the square root of the top number. So the square root of 1 is 1, square root of 2, and the square root of 3. So that is how you're going to remember, or I guess that is the shortcut on how to remember the trig x and y values. So now let's go ahead and use them. Go ahead and turn the page over. We're going to find the exact values of the trigonometric function. I'm only going to do letter B because the rest of it you can probably just figure them out. So I want to find all the values of the trig function when theta, or t in this case, is going to be pi over 4. So what it's asking you is, I want to know what sine of pi over 4 is, cosine of pi over 4, tangent of pi over 4, and then I want to do the reciprocals. So cosecant of pi over 4, secant of pi over 4, and then cotangent of pi over 4. So that's what I want to know. Cool. Well, how do I do this? Well, the beauty of the first quadrant is that once you know the first quadrant, you pretty much know everything else. So, for example, notice that t is equal to pi over 4. The point is that the denominator is equal to pi over 4. And if you go to your unit circle, I'm just going to go real quick. You're going to notice, sorry, it's really hard to, there you go. Okay, you're going to notice that all of the ones that have a pi over 4, let's see, such as that one, that one, that one, that one. All of the ones that say pi over 4, the point is the same. And that is also true for the other ones. All the ones that are over 3 and over 6, the point is exactly the same. So as long as you know if it's something over 4, sine and cosine are always going to be radical 2 over 2 and then radical 2 over 2. If it's over 3, the answer is always going to be 1/2 and radical 3 over 2. Notice right here, this is over 3, 1/2 radical 3 over 2. So again, that's why knowing the first quadrant is very important. Well, I already know that any angle with pi over 4 or something over 4 the point at that angle is always going to be radical 2 over 2. And in this case, pi over 4 is on the first quadrant, which means they're all going to be positive. So based on that, we can go ahead and figure out the answer. So sine of pi over 4, sine is this one's cosine, so that means sine of pi over 4 is equal to radical 2 over 2. Cosine, same thing, radical 2 over 2. Tangent, well, tangent is equal to sine over cosine, so that's going to be radical 2 over 2 divided by radical 2 over 2, and we get the same thing divided by the same thing, so that's just 1. Now cosecant, that's going to be the reciprocal of that, so that's going to be 2 divided by radical 2. But obviously you need to rationalize it, so make sure that you rationalize it. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom by radical 2. So that leaves me with 2 radical 2 divided by, remember those cancel out. That's gone. So I'm left with radical 2. Secant is going to be the reciprocal of cosine. So since it's going to be the same thing, I already did the work for that. So I know it's going to be radical 2. And then cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. With a reciprocal of 1 is just 1. And those would be my answers. Now I'm going to do an extra one just to make sure that you understand how to use the unit circle. So let's say I want to find when t is equal to 4 pi over 3. So I want to find all of the angles for that. So that's going to be sine of 4 pi over 3, cosine of 4 pi over 3, tangent of 4 pi over 3, cosecant of 4 pi over 3, secant of 4 pi over 3, and then the last one, cotangent of 4 pi over 3. All right, well, first I need to figure out what the value for anything over 3 is going to be. Now, if you remember the shortcut that I showed you, you're going to remember that it don't matter what, no, it doesn't matter. Anything divided by over 3 is going to give you that answer, 1/2 and radical 3 over 2. So we know that without looking at the unit circle, I know that the answer is going to be 1/2 and radical 3 over 2. Now the question is, where is 4 pi over 3 on the unit circle? Well, if I create a unit circle or just a circle, and because it's over 3, I need to split this into 3 pieces. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to do the same thing here. 1, 2, 3. Well, I need to find 4 pi. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, which means that point is going to be on quadrant 3. And remember, in quadrant 3, your x value is negative and your y value is also negative. And now I can go ahead and find the rest of the trig identities. So sine of pi over 3, that's going to be negative radical 3 over 2. Cosine of pi over 3, that's going to be negative 1/2. Tangent is equal to, since I'm dividing two negatives, I'm not even going to worry about that. I know tangent is going to be positive, so that's going to be radical 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. And that is basically skip, multiply, flip. That cancels, and I'm left with radical 3. Cosecant of 4 pi over 3. Remember, cosecant is just the flip version of that, so that's going to be 2 divided by radical 3. Don't forget about the negative. we do need to rationalize this. So let's go ahead and rationalize. So this is going to be negative 2 radical 3 divided by, that cancels, and that's my answer. Secant of 4 pi over 3, that's going to be the reciprocal of that. So that's just going to be the reciprocal of negative 1/2, which is just negative 2. And then cotangent is the reciprocal of this. I'm going to take the original one. I know after we rationalized it, we got radical 3. But just to make it easier, the reciprocal of that's going to be 2 divided by radical 3. Again, I need to rationalize this. So this is going to be 2 radical 3 divided by 3. And those are my answers. Now, the last thing that I do want to go over is, and I'm not going to do all of them because I think you pretty much can do it. When it comes to even or odd functions, just remember that any even function, which in this case is cosine and secant, even if the radian is negative, your answer is still going to be positive. For the odd ones, if the radian is negative, your answer will be negative. So let's do one example of each. So cosine is an even function. So even though it says cosine of negative pi over 3, this is actually just cosine of positive pi over 6. And if you remember your shortcut from the fingers, you know that for pi over 6 is going to be our first finger, and cosine of that is going to be radical 3 over 2. Now, if we go to, for example, sine, well, sine is an odd function. So because I have a negative radian, that means that my answer will be negative. So this is actually sine of pi over 4. And what is sine of pi over 4? Well, my answer I know is going to be negative. And then I know sine of pi over 4 is going to be radical 2 over 2. If I use, again, the shortcut that I showed you. So that's what you're going to do today. You're going to go to Envision and attempt the homework.